Hiya, I'm Abla. I'm the founder of Elmi House Productions. I use art and storytelling to help create positive social change, and I'm currently quarantining in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So before the pandemic started, I had started to reevaluate the way in which I was living my life, in the sense that I was always on the go. I've had the distinct pleasure and opportunity of living in different countries around the world, and it's always really interesting to see the pace at which people move. And then the pandemic happened, and it wasn't really a choice anymore whether or not we could slow down. And so some things that I've started to look forward to in my daily life are as simple as making a cup of tea in the morning and having it in silence before everybody wakes up. So I've gotten the opportunity to work in both the humanitarian and media industries. And in my experience working in both, I kept encountering the same problem over and over again. And that problem was that, there was a really big issue with how the stories of marginalized and vulnerable communities were being told. And that issue usually stemmed from the fact that it wasn't people from within those communities that were telling these stories. It was usually people from outside those communities who would come into these communities with a story in mind, find the people they needed to tell it, and then go back and package it however they wanted to, never really thinking about the ethical ramifications that these stories would have. And I'd get hired for these jobs, and everybody would be super excited about what I had to suggest, and the fact that I'd be like, I think a solution is that we should really include the community whose stories we're telling. And over again, I'd get hired for these job opportunities, and over again, there was always a reason why we couldn't tell these stories differently. Eventually, I started to think about the fact that, I don't know whose permission I'm waiting for to do things differently, and I don't know if that permission is ever coming. And so I was like, if I really want to be a part of the change, if I really want to bring change in this industry, I guess that I'm gonna have to go out there and build my own thing. And so that's what I ended up doing. I ended up creating my company that I am building right now, which is called Elmi House Productions, which is a storytelling company that aims to tell stories using an inclusive storytelling method that I'm building, which tries to answer the question, what would stories look like if the people whose stories were being told were included in the storytelling process? I am ethnically Somali, and the only way that I would get to learn about what it meant to be Somali was either through the stories my parents would tell me or the negative things I would see in the news. But there was no books I could read, no magazines I could open or museums I could go to learn about this really big part of who I was. It really is a privilege to get to turn on the TV and know that any channel you switch to, you have a high likelihood of seeing somebody who looks like you. Watching Black Panther, I think, was a very profound experience for myself, in the sense that I had never ever experienced anything like that before growing up, or in my existence thus far, because all the depictions I'd seen in the Western world about Africa and African people were either about poverty or disease, war, or people or something to be pitied. And then to see African people in the lead, in front of the camera, saving the world and depicted in a positive light was such a profound experience. The first time I saw it, I was seated next to a 4-year-old boy, and I thought about what kind of world is he gonna grow up in? Seeing things like this and people depicted in this way will be his norm if we do our jobs right. The one big hope I have for my life and the work that I do is that I have some kind of impact on changing the way in which the stories of marginalized and vulnerable communities are told. Because I think that a lot of the problems in our world truly stems from, these problematic stories that we tell each other about each other, And if we could change that, I really think that that would take us, towards living in a world that is more tolerable and more equitable, having no power over the stories that were told about me and people who look like me and all of the different communities that I came from. I know the specific impact that it had on my life. I think it's really beautiful how, because of things like social media, I'm able to connect with creatives of color from all over the world, learn about their lives and their experiences directly from them, and be educated by them. It is truly a wonder to get to see my peers all over the world and hear their stories. And it's something that I'm really, I don't take for granted, and I am really, really grateful for.